It's time for Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Trey, Lyle, filling in for Brian Nolan, the man. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, Brian, for that. On Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan, we're off to a great start here, but we have a great podcast for you. Chase Folsom joins us a little bit later on to discuss the latest headlines, talking a little bit about Kyle Larson and a documentary coming out about him. Of course, the news this week with Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing, plus whatever we saw Saturday in the Xfinity race is also discussed as well. But first, let's get into the Inferno, and we're going with a guy who is hot right now. That is Daniel Hemric. He is the latest winner of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, coming off a win at Martinsville. Our very own Dalton Hopkins, my cohort of the Happy Hour podcast, got to sit down with him at Miami, at Homestead the other week. So we are going to play that conversation for you right now. Daniel Hemric heads into the Inferno.
Now it's time for
White flag is in the air, 1 to go. Daniel Hemric. He's gone to the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, back to Cup, and this year came back to the Truck Series where it all started. He has worked his career off trying to get to victory lane. Comes out at turn number 4. Daniel Hemric, checkered flag, he wins it at Martinsville Speedway.
To go into the Inferno with Brian.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you. A lot of us have wanted to talk to you, just because you have had like a really, I consider you like the ultimate journeyman of this sport, just because I think you've raced just about everyone at this point.
I appreciate that.
But
yes.
So I guess first off, like, can you just tell me like about the decision to come back down? I guess I should actually ask you, when did MHR first approach you?
Let's see. I believe the first time myself and anyone from HR, that being Bill McAnally, reached out to me was via a text. Said he'd like to chat. If I was open to hearing what he had going on, then give him a call. And I want to say that was either shortly after Michigan Cup race weekend. I remember that because I believe we were either under rain delay or something there. So it kind of, some reason stuck out to me is I remember that. So, fast forward a couple weeks, just the way contracts and stuff are, negotiating and terms, all I had to wait a little bit. The long story short, when we had our first conversation shortly after that, it was something that I didn't have on my radar, something that, honestly, not only was not on my radar, it just, man, you're still in the middle of that grind, and I'm guilty probably as anybody. I don't know if everybody else rolls this way or not, but for me, no matter what I'm doing at the time, like I am fully immersed into that and other stuff, other series, other whatever. I mean, it's been that way for me since I can remember racing. Like if I was racing go-karts, that's really the only thing that I remember racing at the time. If it was legend car, that's all I remember thinking about. It wasn't, hey, I'm doing this and worried about what's going on here or there. So, long story short, yeah, it was right after Michigan, and after the first conversation I had with Bill, I was intrigued and then started sleeping on it for a few weeks.
When did you finally make that decision that you were going to go ahead and go with it?
Gosh, when was that? I think it was around the Vegas fall race. I had a pretty good idea that's where I was leaning towards. Mm-hmm. Obviously with MHR support from Napa, the relationship that Bill has built with them over the past 35 years, and was everything, and super intriguing just to have a chance to, continue the journey first off, but also do it with a group that, they've proven as winners. They've proven themselves as winners within the Truck Series, and have grown a lot within a short time here on the back at the truck level. Because I don't know if people remember, it's Bill's second time as an owner in the Truck Series. So just where the growth and trajectory was of the team. So it was about that Vegas time I made the decision.
When were you told by Kaulig that you were not going to return?
Oh my gosh, man, you're putting me on the timeline here. I don't.
Well, so I guess you shouldn't. I don't need a specific time. I guess I should ask, what was that conversation like?
It was pretty simple, really. I knew kind of what was expected, what the burden they were faced with from a financial standpoint. And to be just completely blunt, it wasn't, at least for my partners or people that were involved, that had been involved that year, nothing about our performance as a whole made sense for them to continue to spend money for that kind of output. And there wasn't a lack of effort on anybody's part. So, the writing was on the wall, and I understand it, and I get it. I was also at a point to where I was truly not exhausted, but just a little fed up with going to try to hustle and find and, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you want to call it, to find partners to go execute at your highest level you can and your race team could on certain weekends. And the 25th, 6th, 7th result was the best you were going to get out of that. And that wasn't really fun for anybody. And but through that journey, I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about, how big my shoulders are and what I can handle. And in the grand scheme of things, I always tell everybody, like, my journey has been my own and nobody knows it quite like I do. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody as far as the path, but it's my path, and I'm thankful for the way I've had to do it because of the perspective I've gained through all of it.
So through all that perspective, for the lessons learned, what are some of those things that you have learned through your time moving up into the Cup Series, competing in the Cup Series, that you can take into this year?
Well, I think that goes even way before I ever race in the NASCAR ranks. Was that, I, of course, as a 5-year-old kid racing go-karts, like, the race at top series of the sport that I was just starting in was a goal, right? But there was no way, shape, or form through a magic genie in a bottle or whatever was I ever going to get that opportunity. And but the one thing that stayed constant was I just tried to prepare the best I could for each and every weekend, and whether it be go-karts, legend cars, late models, super late models, whatever it was, modifieds, like whatever it was I was going to race, I just was always trying to get to the next race that week. And one thing that always made sense was that if I wasn't there, then it for sure wasn't going to happen. And I was, I don't call it fortunate or unfortunate for others, but I saw folks get opportunities that I kind of helped them throughout their career, whether it be from a coaching perspective or, whether I was building cars for other people, other drivers who eventually went on to be Cup guys. Like there was a lot. It's pretty funny now because a lot of guys in the series that are even, Xfinity and Cup guys now that drove for me, my personal cars at one point. So, I bring that up because there's times where I wasn't driving, but continued working and always trying to answer the call to show up week in and week out. Like, I think, that perspective never wavered. And I got to a point where I just accepted that I was probably going to be in a short track guy the rest of my life. And whether that was owning, building, driving my own cars or driving for other people, I was fortunate enough to have made a decent living doing that. Even my wife at the time, right? I was pre-kids and all that. Like, we could pay our bills and we were racing, and we were short track racing all over the country for different owners, different parts of the year, different times. And whenever the opportunity came to go to NASCAR racing, I think it just validated that initial perspective. And right place, right timing. The old saying of you never know who you're around, who's watching, who's listening is no more true than the story of what got me my first NASCAR start. It has been an incredible journey just to be a part of. I always joke about writing a book, but I can't, right, wrong, or differently, I can't make sense out of why I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to get not only these opportunities, but also just be surrounded by so many good people along the way. And I think just the perspective of trying to be the best version of yourself and try to help others along the way, man. That's the perspective I've gained.
So somebody who loves doing this so much, does it matter what series you're in as long as you're racing?
It doesn't, in the sense of we want to race, right? That's what I've done my entire life. But racing, particularly on Sundays, at the capacity in which I was doing it, that didn't make sense to me. Like, I always thought I loved racing, and that was it. And then I realized through different bullet points of my life, highs and lows, that I really, as much as I do love racing, I love competition even more. So for myself, just racing in a series where I'm just competitive. If I'm getting on the airplane, if I'm training all week, every week, getting on an airplane, flying, and then as your personal life changes and you have family and your wife and kids at home that you're leaving on a regular basis, if I'm doing that, I'm going to go and be in a situation where I can be competitive. And that's what this particular opportunity affords me versus my 2024 season.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, you're coming from Kaulig, like you said yourself, the Kaulig racing car, much more than 26th place in the Cup Series. But now you're with a team that, points wise, I mean, old point standings formula would have won the championship last year. How much confidence does that give you? More confidence, or does that give you more pressure onto you?
Not pressure. I mean, I know many athletes say it, and I've said it, that nobody puts more pressure on you than you do yourself. But in the grand scheme of things, like, those days are kind of past me from a pressure standpoint. Like, I know in the right situation with the right group and the right people, right support around me, that I know I can do it. I've always known I can do it. I may not have hit 100 home runs, equaling race wins, right? But short of that, man, I don't know what else I could have done to prove myself that I can do this. And just having that chance to come back here, I don't want to say come back here, but just have an opportunity to be competitive again and know that this entire organization and the support they give Chevrolet and all this stuff, right? Like, that's all the stuff that I didn't realize I missed as much as I did. Back to the point I made about competition, like, that's what I love more than just the racing, it's just competition in general. So, to compete at the highest level, ask the most out of myself, that's something I've never wavered that I knew I could do. And it's been fun going through the process.
The part of that was like, so other folks have done this exact same thing in the past. We saw Benedetto come down, drive the 25 truck, and then he's full-time in Xfinity now. John Hunter came down, went to the 4 truck, and he's already made his way back into the Cup Series and sort of restarted it. Do you see a pathway to? Is there a pathway for you to get back into the Cup Series? Is that what you're hoping for?
It's not, and that was one of mine and Bill McAnally's one of our first 2 or 3 phone calls we had was regarding that. Bill's built this relationship with Napa for 35 years. They're celebrating their 100th year in business. And continually through Bill's experience in the sport, he's had young guys come in and drive, and he's known it, and they've known it when they came to drive, that they were going to be there for a year, 2 years, maybe less, maybe more, but their goal was to continue forward. Obviously, it meant not driving for Bill for long term. And when we started discussing this, because of the situation that he's built for himself, that Bill has, I told him, I was like, man, it's not about, for me coming to do this, if we do this, it's not about coming to do this to, hey, look at me, I can still do this, to give me another shot in the Xfinity Cup. That's one thing we laid the groundwork for initially, and that was one of his main points, because eventually you build guys up. Yeah, it's fun to say, man, look what they go and do, but to continue to keep a program solid, kind of keep a foundation. You look at it right now, like Christian Eckes went on, him and Charles and I both did an incredible job with this group, and Charles went cup racing to be a crew chief, and Christian goes to move up in the Xfinity Series, an opportunity he had to take. And I bring that up because every time it's a bit of a void, though, then it's a lot on everyone at MHR and Bill specifically to rebuild, try to get people back in place. So the root of that is, if we can keep a constant of one person who's going to drive the truck and try to build a team around it. And I told him, if this goes like you want it to, like I want it to, and like we both collectively know it can go, I said, all things considered, and it makes sense, I would do this until I quit driving race cars. And we left it at that. So, yeah, I mean, if you get your opportunities, whether it be a couple one-off Xfinity races or Cup races, like that's stuff that you never know is going to come up you have those conversations when they do, and maybe they don't. But the root of me being here was to be competitive week in and week out, hopefully year in and year out. And as that happens, I can solidify my own legacy and be content with whatever that is.
I find that so interesting, and I appreciate your candor, because I think I asked the same question to both Matt and John Hunter, and they both said, "Yeah, like I'm hoping to get at some point back to the Cup Series."
Yeah,
but that's a refreshing take. I mean, I'm very.
Yeah, but in all fairness to those guys too, like I was there, like when I tell a story. I mean, this is getting kind of deep here, but like when I got the call to go Cup racing in 19. So I got that call obviously in 18 to go Cup racing in 19. Like I wanted to race another year of Xfinity. I felt like we were hitting our stride. I felt like we had built a team that was capable of winning week in and week out. And then all of a sudden, with just events and the way they turned out, are starting to need me to step up and drive that Cup car. But the whole time in my mind, and I'm not ashamed to say this, that I built up in my head that when I finally got a chance to go Cup racing, I was going to be able to do it for as long as I wanted to do it, and not for as long as they were going to let me do it. And then, 6 or 7 months later, 8 months later, I was out of a deal. So I made it known when the way that all went down, that when I got back, when I lost my deal there, that I was going to come back and run Xfinity, run whatever I could with the full intention of getting back Cup racing. And successful, unsuccessful, people may view it differently, but for me, going back, winning the Xfinity Series Championship, finally winning at that on that stage, going back Cup racing, like I fulfilled the journey over.
Yeah.
I mean, do that right, wrong, or indifferent. Sundays are hard. It's tough to do. All this stuff's hard. But I don't mean no disrespect to Matt Kaulig and everyone there at Kaulig Racing. And the program they're building is going to be good one day, and they're doing a great job with what they have. 3 different times, specifically Dover stands out to me from last season in that Cup car, running 9th there. Like having that journey come back all the way around, get back to that level, go run 9th in a Cup race at Dover. I mean, my gosh, like those are moments that, whether people see it or not, like internally myself, like I'm content because I know I could do it on any given day, given the right situation. That's all I needed. So that's where the inner peace comes from when I say I would do this as long as I could do it. As it made sense for my family and for Bill and myself. Just want to be competitive.
So if I were to ask you where you saw yourself in 5 years, where would you picture yourself? Where would you
5
hope
years?
to picture yourself?
I would hope to picture myself as at least one, if not multiple Cup Series. My gosh, one if not multiple.
Shoot for the moon.
Yeah.
I respect that. Yeah.
No, I think I want to start over. That's not where I was going with this. I see myself as a one, if not more, time truck champion, with a lot of race wins, and hopefully a group that's decided to stay and build and grow together. I know it's not going to stay the same forever, but just want people to understand and see what Bill McAnally puts into this and results you can get by keeping core people integrated together for one common goal of lifting each other up to be contenders every week.
So after this is race 4 now of the season for the trucks, what needs to happen? How do you guys band together, start winning races and winning championships?
Well, we touched on people earlier, and for right now, where we're at the 19 group, like you said, it we're race number 4 having race number 4 as we talk about this, of literally nobody on this team's worked together.
Wow.
Like this entire, people made a big deal about Charles Van Eyck leaving, which was a crucial role to the whole organization, not just 19 truck. But following him, not one other person is on this 19 team from years past. So truck chief, mechanics, engineers, everybody on this deal is different than it's been. So we have our own culture that we're trying to establish, that we're trying to build. That's where we're at, race 4. That being said, there's a long runway here for us, or tall ceiling, whatever phrase you want to use. But there's a lot of things still to come from us that, that's why I get so excited now to get on a plane and fly to a racetrack.
So with that all said, I mean, you guys are trying to build together. So first off, I mean, how many guys are still here from? Really, is it completely just new?
Spotter and the owner are the only people in the
No
19
kidding.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, people know that.
That's crazy.
Spotter and the owner. This is Josh Graham, my crew chief. He's Xfinity raced the last 2 years, never truck raced. Yeah, our engineer has been within the MHR fold, but not on this team. Our car chief, John, comes from an Xfinity car. He worked with Josh Graham over there, and Evan, one of the new guys, he was at a different organization up until the week of Daytona. So, and then even that goes even back to the shop. Some of our guys, different fab guys, different. We have literally could not be more of a new race team within the MHR than this one. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, that's okay. So I did not know that. I mean, that's very intriguing. So are you guys? Is there growing pains? Like, have you guys experienced anything like that?
I think you just experience new processes together, and that's what they are. They're experiences. Because like, if I have questions about, for instance, the digital dash, well, who needs to handle that? Well, Josh, crew chief's never dealt with that. Like, so my point is, like, there's these little things that you got to work and understand, and I like to think that everyone. No, I know for a fact that everyone that signed on knew this was part of the deal. Like, but they also know that if they, and I've preached this, to continue their process, continue our process together, and the rest will take care of itself, because we know we have the parts and pieces to go do what we need to do.
So with that in mind, with you guys coming together now, trying to recreate this culture and this team, do you guys have a goal set in mind, like a realistic goal set in mind for this year?
No. I mean, we were hired on because Bill thought each and every individual. And I was part of that hiring process, hiring people, which was fun to kind of be a part of for the first time. And no, the goals were simple. That if we do our job, we know some really special stuff that can happen. And it may take us, it may take us 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks. It may take us all the way down. Use me as a prime example. If we figure out a way to get to Phoenix, and it's all equal ground. So either way, I know with our experience individually that collectively we can do some really cool stuff. So yeah, I just look forward to getting everyone in MHR excited about what we can do. It's has yet to be seen, but I know it can be done.
With you having to go from 38 straight weeks of racing now down to, 23? I think it's 23 weekends now.
25 now.
25 now.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that extra time?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't even know how to allocate that time properly yet. And then listen, at the end of the day, that did weigh heavily into also why this makes sense, right? I mean, gosh, I have a 2-year-old and a little girl at home that'll be 5 in May, and yeah, you can go drive something competitive, have a massive brand like Napa behind you, and support from them. Chevrolet, be a tier 1 team around good people like we have here at MHR. Oh yeah, by the way, you get to have all but 3 or 4 of your Saturdays and all of your Sundays back. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Yeah, sign me up. So, yeah, it was a little strange leaving Atlanta having 2 weeks. Because that was the first time I'd experienced that in a long, long time. In a really long time. And as I went through that, like, it was just bizarre to think we were just out doing what we were doing on a Friday and Saturday and a Sunday. And I do miss being at the racetrack. I mean, gosh, I grew up racing 50, 60, 70 races a year. So ever since I went NASCAR racing, there's been times in my life where that's all I did. And that like mentally drained me, just not continue to go. I just wanted to race. And so this schedule allows the family life and allows also some personal stuff that I've got interest in that, I can allocate a little time to without taking away from this. And yeah, it's, I don't know, ask me the next time we have a break after Martinsville, like, hey, what are you doing now the next 2 weeks? Because I don't have that part of it figured out yet, but I'll tell you one thing, it's a great problem to have.
Oh, so is this like the least, like racing schedule wise, is this the least busy you've been when was the last time you were this much free time?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, free time is relative, right? Like,
yeah. In terms of racing schedule, you weren't at the racetrack.
Yeah, this is definitely it on that side. Gosh, I think maybe 2016 truck racing was the last time I was like this. At the time, with just folks around me, I wasn't allowed to do any of my other racing, which was at the time I was going back and running legend cars on Tuesdays at summer shootout for fun, and I'd go run a pro late model, late model race here or there. In 2016, that got put to a halt. So I really haven't done much extracurricular racing outside of that. Yeah, so to have the weeks and time now to do like, well, maybe, midweek shows, short track racing is more of a thing now than it was back 10 years ago. And it opens up opportunities to do some of that stuff if I choose. And but I've also, that time, I've had to take on a good bit more of a leadership role or managementship role within our team, right? So like, my concerns and conversations are different than what they were 10 years ago when I had free time and how I allocate that time itself. So yeah, it's been fun. That's the word we used when we started this journey. I'm excited that's still going.
Any thoughts about doing some extracurricular stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I do. To be honest with you, I've been extremely pumped up to go do some multiple races that I've kind of put on my own radar, driving for other folks, driving for myself. Literally dusted off my super late model or straight rail car within the last couple of months, and slowly but surely getting it ready with no intention of where I want to race it, just want to get it ready and then decide. But also I've identified over the last 2 to 3 weeks that, some things I need to do differently and just be better from that management kind of role with our folks that may slow what I want to do on some of that side down, just because I feel like still this is my main concern. So I don't want to take anything away from this. And if I think for any second it's going to, then I won't go do that other stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of fluid. But yeah, at some point I will race other things this year. I just don't know when or where or how often.
Gotcha. So when we do see you win in the truck series, do we see a backflip?
That's a great question too. I had a partner standing on pit road with me in Vegas last week, and he's like, "Can you still do it?" And my wife was standing there next to me, and I said, "Well, I haven't practiced in a long time." It's funny enough that it was standing in our backyard this week, and the kids and kids was like, "You should practice. You should just do one." So I was standing there, and so I did one. I was like, "Well, that's good. I guess the old knees can still do it." But I am getting older. A lot of folks don't know I've had extensive knee surgeries in both my legs. So if for some reason I don't do it, it's because I feel like my knee maybe getting hung up or something. But man, adrenaline starts pumping after those moments. You don't forget those moments, what they feel like from just the thrill of victory. Who knows? We'll see.
Does Carl Edwards ever talk to you about that?
We have.
Yeah.
We have. Carl and I had a mutual friend and just a great person in my life was Dave Rogers, and that was Carl's last company crew chief. And
right.
Obviously Dave went on to be my Xfinity crew chief in 2021, and we Carl and I have crossed paths, and we actually got to spend Dave Rogers him and his beautiful wife. They got married shortly after we won the championship in Phoenix, and Carl and I sat at his wedding together and got to chit chat. Just fun talk. I mean, it's a guy that I had so much respect for and looked up to as a kid. So, he said it was pretty cool because I did it off the roof of the car and not, the door. I don't know if the old licks can still handle the landing like that, but we'll see.
Well, you're driving the same number as him now.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Different manufacturer though now. So
Yeah.
No, it's all good stuff, man. So, if nothing else has happened, not to tie all this story back in, but the journey I've been on, the folks I've met, driving for all three manufacturers along the way, my goodness, I can't help but say this, but Carl said this in his Hall of Fame speech that I admired, that he never knew why or what as far as people got put in his life. And he said simply that God is real. It's like no other reason. I've been fortunate and blessed, and I've just had a tremendous amount of support for just continue to have faith and continue to process, and that's what we're doing.
All of that in mind, and this is your chance to leave a message to anybody that's going to listen or anybody that's going to read. To all those people out there, that I'm sure you've seen it on social media, all those people that doubt you, that say the things they say about you, and your time in NASCAR. What message do you want to leave them?
My gosh, as vague as it sounds, like I don't have one. Like being true to myself, trying to emulate somebody that your wife, your family, your kids can be proud of, and all when we're off the racetrack, like in general, just proud of you as who you are as a person. I think you do that stuff and continue to have your faith in what matters in this world. Like, I don't really care what other people say or view me as.
Let the actions speak louder than words.
To a point.
Maybe one of them's going to be a backflip. Maybe we'll see some more backflips.
Time will tell.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate your time. Thank you, man.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Absolutely appreciate your time.
Oh,
Wish you
yeah.
Best of luck this weekend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to thank so much for MHR and so much for Dalton for getting that interview, as Daniel Hemric, of course, is the winner at Martinsville this past weekend. Great conversation that Dalton had with him. So thanks so much for checking it out. Now let's get to What's Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Joining me now is Chase Folsom, C Folsom _ racing on the Tweeter machine, and X, whatever you want to call it. But Chase, hope you're doing well, my friend. Good to have you on for this week. You had a busy weekend. You were at Wade County for part of it. You obviously went as a fan to the race on Saturday. So busy weekend for you and a busy week in all of NASCAR. Big news this week is it was confirmed that Kyle Larson was already doing the double once again, but a couple of aspects were now updated. Prime Video, Amazon Prime, is joining him as a sponsor for this, and they are producing a documentary, which the team, he talked about this, was already going to film the 2024 double. They just decided to continue for the 2025 attempt as well. And now I think another part of this, it kind of a clear path of Larson will do Charlotte no matter what at this point, because it has been confirmed that Tony Kanaan, who's actually the team principal at McLaren, obviously former Indy 500 champion, a very, a Hall of Famer in IndyCar, will be his backup driver. So your overall thoughts, the reveal, the livery / paint scheme were revealed this week. So it's coming real again with Larson doing the double. But your overall thoughts on the documentary and the fact that Hendrick kind of has a clear plan that Larson will do Charlotte no matter what.
Well, I think they weren't left any choice once NASCAR made the mandates that they did over the offseason. As for the documentary, I think it's really cool. I think it'll be neat to see, because, last year, for lack of a better way to say it, was kind of a failure, right? He didn't complete the double. He didn't even turn a lap at Charlotte, and he had a good run derailed by a speeding penalty at Indy. So should everything go to plan this year and he put together 2 solid runs, it'll be cool to see kind of the letdown from last year if they got that, and then the build back up to another attempt this year. So that'll be neat to see. You mentioned the schemes on both the cars. I really like the Indy car. I think the Cup car could have been a little better. I think it's a downgrade from last year's, but they kind of match. So I guess it's cool. I think the documentary is actually going to be pretty good.
Okay, he's technically undefeated in a McLaren Cup car scheme, because the one race he ran, the quote-unquote McLaren scheme, he won at Indianapolis, which I was glad they did let him use that car last year, or that scheme at least last year. My guess is they might use that scheme again when they get back to Indy, no matter what happens, especially if he has success in the Indy 500, which I wouldn't doubt at this point. The other big headline this week, and to add more my opinion, documentary, I'm all for. Prime has done a really good job with these. As an Eagles fan, Kelsey was a great documentary. I think you're right. I think the key story will be the redemption arc that we'll see, and that growth from his, I don't want to say failure last year, because he did do the Indianapolis 500. Like, he performed well in the Indianapolis 500. The disappointment of last year is a better way to put it than a failure, and then the redemption arc of this season And there's a clear plan of we kind of know what Larson's doing. We didn't know that last year. I think everyone could have guessed what he was doing. As for the other big headline, and I'll let you discuss this. I talked a lot about it last night on Happy Hour, but Legacy Motor Club suing Rick Ware Racing over a charter agreement, a charter sale, and basically the key being here, the year is in doubt, 2026 or 2027. So what were your initial thoughts on seeing that?
So I'm going to be 100% honest. Through all of the short track stuff that happened this weekend, this was something that I didn't really see until today.
Well, it came out last night, so you're okay.
Well, I know it came out last night, but I haven't done my due diligence that I should have to read enough of it. But my first reaction was, whoa, because I think a team suing another team over a charter sale agreement, whatever, in the midst of two other teams suing NASCAR over charters is certainly a choice. And I think in all honesty, I think it'll just add another twist to the lawsuit with NASCAR, because I feel like it's going to end up getting tied in somehow, because that's monetary value that's being talked about here. And that's kind of what the other lawsuit is about. So I think this lawsuit is going to have a massive effect on the other one. And I need to read into it more to give you much beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned that. I think the key language is it 26 or 27, the year it gets transferred. And another thing is, if Rick Ware is failing as a team or selling off as a team, that is fuel for the 2311 FRM fire that, hey, this is another race team getting priced out of the sport because of XY reasons. So a lot more to develop, but definitely something to monitor. Something that we don't want to see anymore maybe is what we saw on Saturday, and that leads to our soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
It's your track races.
It's time for the soundbites of the week.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I'm not very proud of that, what I did. I mean, it's just, he just has no respect for me, and he was flipping me off under the red flag, swerving at my door. I moved him into one. He still had to lead those two restarts, and going on the back straightaway, I thought to myself, what would he do in this situation? And he would have done the exact same thing. So, he's flipping me off, and that right there was the line for me to ultimately make the decision I made. I mean, if I just let him go, I accepted that I finished second today, and I tried to do my best for my team and myself to win a clock, and it just wasn't good enough.
Anything constructive with your discussion with him?
Oh, I mean, no. I mean, he said he wants to go at it. I mean, we can go at it if he wants, but I think, at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a lot more going forward, and that's okay with me.
Why is it okay?
Oh, I think he just, I think he's got I don't know. I just think he has no respect for me, and we've raced hard and had issues in the past, and I just think I thought he would have done the same thing to me, move me if I was in the lead, and that's what you have to do. If you don't do that, you're going to be the one getting run over, and I know everyone's going to be mad and upset at me and say I'm a dirty driver, but I don't care because everybody does it, and if I was just going to accept and finish second today, then that just wasn't going to set well with me.
You say he has no respect for you. Do you have any respect for him?
Not really. I mean, we've had issues through our, 10 years of racing together, and when he was flipping me off and swerving out my door just because I was bumping him into one on the restart, that right there was the line for me.
So there you have it. Sammy Smith. Rarely do we do an Xfinity Series soundbite for this segment. This might be the first time we've done this. His brashness, his unapologetic did strike me as the man who was taking that video there post-race after the Xfinity race. And Chase, I think we've covered the Sammy Smith move enough. We talked a lot about it yesterday. on Happy Hour. But my question goes to you, with your background of being our, grassroots expert with all the Cars Tour races you do. You see this in the Cars Tour where how they penalize drivers. Your opinion on, I think, what should be more of the conversation, the penalizing drivers in race, whether it's sending them to the back, docking them a lap, whatever it may be, versus what they did with Sammy Smith was, you keep your result. Granted, his result was not great because he wrecked, but you get the fit. Like, let's say he finished second in this scenario, and you then, he just loses the 50 points and the 25 or the $25,000 fine, whatever it is. But the $25,000 fine. Like, what would you prefer, the Tuesday punishment or the in-race punishment?
In race, 365 days a year in race, because we've gotten to the point where, I'm sorry, that this isn't racing. Like, I don't want to talk too much about the incident itself because I'm sure we've beaten it to death, but we're beyond any level of racecraft being shown. And I think we've reached the point in our sport where judgment calls on avoidable contact are necessary. I think there could also be a rule implemented like the Cars Tour does. We saw a perfect example of it on Saturday night, like simultaneously as this was happening with Landon Huffman and Ryan Millington. They were racing for second, and a lot more respect was shown in this case, but two guys going for the same piece of real estate. Huffman spun Millington and was going to come out in second anyway, and they sent him to the back because he was part of the caution. If you're the cause of the caution, you go to the back. If you spin somebody, you go to the back. That's just how it is. And not just the Cars Tour, every form of short track racing. ASA does it, Southern Super Series, the Midwest Tour, the ACT up in the Northeast. This is kind of commonplace in grassroots racing. And I think it's something a lot of the drivers that are the repeat offenders of this in the Xfinity Series are the people who don't spend enough time in those grassroots series because they're speed running their way up the ladder because they have money. And therefore, they're not accustomed to what the consequences are of wrecking somebody and getting away with it. And there needs to be consequences put in place.
Pretty well said. Pretty well said. Let's check out that checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Anything you want to rant, rave, or review? Chase Folsom, the floor is yours.
So, sitting in the grandstands at turns 3 and 4 at Martinsville, I watched that race, and it was a solid race in the first half. And then the second half kind of sucked. So if anybody's wondering, I voted no on the Gluck poll.
I voted yes.
I voted no. We're beyond the point of blaming Goodyear. Everybody that's blaming Goodyear needs to stop blaming Goodyear because Goodyear is built just about as good of a tire as they can for this situation. And at some point we have to realize that it's a car problem and the car has too much mechanical grip, and it isn't just a short track problem. It's everywhere. People just don't want to admit it. So that's my rant of the day on why the next gen car has way too much mechanical grip and not enough horsepower.
Horsepower. Man, I've heard that 6 or 7 times. To be
Truth.
Well, I'm going to talk about Darlington and just how I ever since I got to go there and experience it live, I have an even more appreciation for it, and why I think if you built a bucket list, it's towards the top, because it's literally like the history of NASCAR in a racetrack. And it's obviously that's why they do throwback weekend there. And there's a larger conversation on if we should have throwbacks. I keep saying yes. I don't care about the repeaters at this point, because it's still just cool. It's, and who doesn't love nostalgia? So if you've never been, go. It's a great track. It's a great experience. Go on this weekend. Go on the Southern 500 weekend. Experience at least once. It's so cool. Obviously, being media, I was lucky to be able to sit in the TV. There's like a stand in turn 1 where you can see the guys entering the corner and going high. It's honestly like the coolest view you can get at a racetrack, just because you see it, and it's a cool experience. So if you could take anything from this pod, which hopefully you take a lot, because I feel like we shared some good information, and Daniel Hemric's interview with Dalton was great, and hopefully you learned a lot from that as well. But go visit Darlington is my advice. All right, Chase, before we get on out of here, see Folsom _racing. Anything you want to plug before we sign off for this? Technically, we're recording Wednesday night, but it's Thursday afternoon when this comes out.
Yeah, so if you want to see some proper short track racing, not what happened with the Martinsville Xfinity Series race, check out the Cars Tour and check out all of our grassroots racing content for Front Stretch under the Grassroots tab on the website. Cars Tour, ASA, everything you're looking for there, and then the Front Stretch Grassroots YouTube channel where you'll find all the interviews. It's great all the time, and they are consistent with their policing policies.
Cars Tour this weekend? No, right?
Next. ASA this weekend, Cars Tour next. Dale's racing. There you go. Dale's racing.
This weekend? No,
Next
in the
weekend
Cars Tour.
at Cordele.
Where's ASA at?
Dominion this weekend.
Hey, in the 804. Shout out.
Yeah, we'll be there. Trey, you should come.
I'm busy. All right. That will do it for today. I am. I'm a busy man. Dude, this is a Saturday off. I'm taking advantage of it while I still can. All right. Hey. I am. Okay. Well, I might smoke a brisket. I don't know. I got plans. All right. At Trey Lyle VT, check out Happy Hour. I got to go more into the Legacy Motor Club thing, the Sammy Smith thing. Make sure you check that out. I had some great content this past weekend at Martinsville with Steven. Check that all out. All right, here on the YouTube channel, or as for the podcast, if you're listening to this on the audio side, Wyatt Watson going to come out with Through the Gears, latest betting info for the Goodyear 400. I still think it's the Goodyear 400, the race at Darlington this weekend. And then, of course, right after the race, the great Caleb Barnes with Stock Car Scoop, recapping it all. For Chase, I'm Trey Lyle, signing off for now. Thank you so much for bringing the heat.
I'm Caleb Barnes with FrontStretch.com. Come back soon for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.